Dae-ho Kim stared at the broken hyperdrive engine and cursed under his breath. His cargo ship, the Lucky Strike, had been his home for 15 years. Now it sat dead in the docking bay of Vortex Prime, the most dangerous trading station in the Outer Rim. "How much for repairs?" Dae-ho asked the mechanic, a six-armed creature covered in grease. 5,000 credits, the alien replied without looking up. Dae-ho checked his account. He had 800 credits left, not even enough for fuel, let alone repairs. He was stuck on this floating pile of metal and rust, surrounded by pirates, smugglers, and worse things. Vortex Prime never slept. The station spun slowly in space, its lights flickering like angry stars. Inside, beings from 100 different worlds traded, fought, and cheated each other. The air smelled of exotic spices, engine fuel, and fear. Dae-ho walked through the crowded corridors. Aliens of all shapes and sizes pushed past him. Some had too many eyes, others had no eyes at all. A few looked almost human, but their skin was wrong colors or they had extra arms growing from strange places. He needed money fast. There was only one place on Vortex Prime where someone could get rich quick or lose everything in a single night: the Crimson Nebula. The gambling den sat in the station's lower levels, hidden behind a door marked only with a red spiral symbol. Dae-ho had been here once before, years ago. He had won enough to buy fuel and left quickly. Smart gamblers knew when to quit. But smart gamblers weren't desperate. The bouncer was a massive creature with stone-like skin and 4 arms. Each hand held a different weapon. He looked at Dae-ho like he was examining a bug. "Cover charges 50 credits, human," the bouncer growled. Dae-ho paid and stepped inside. The Crimson Nebula was exactly as he remembered. Dark, smoky, and filled with the sound of clinking coins and alien curses. Holographic displays showed odds for various games. The air tasted of alcohol and broken dreams. In the center of the room stood Thekmor, the Vrexian who owned the place. His purple skin glistened under the red lights. His 4 eyes never stopped moving, watching every game, every bet, every player. He made money whether people won or lost. Dae-ho started small. A few hands of cards here, some dice there. He won some, lost some. But slowly his 800 credits grew to 1,000, then 1,500. By midnight he had 3,000 credits. It wasn't enough for repairs, but it was progress. That's when the announcement came. "Attention, fellow beings!" Thekmor's voice boomed through speakers. "Tonight we have something special. 7 of the galaxy's most feared captains have gathered for their yearly tournament. The stakes are higher than ever before." The gambling den grew quiet. Even hardened pirates stopped their games to listen. The prize includes their combined territories, their fleets, and the crown jewel, the Eternal Drifter. The legendary ship that no weapon can destroy and no pilot can catch. Murmurs filled the room. Everyone had heard stories about the Eternal Drifter. Some said it was built by gods. Others claimed it was alive. All agreed it was the most powerful ship in known space. 7 aliens sat at a large table in the back of the room. Dae-ho recognized them from wanted posters and news broadcasts. Each one commanded fleets that terrorized entire star systems. Captain Vexra of the Crystalline Dominion sat like a living statue. Her body was made of clear crystal that sparkled in the light. Her ships could phase through solid matter and regenerate any damage. Admiral Korthzel of the Shadow Armada looked like a patch of moving darkness. His fleet existed partly in another dimension, making them nearly impossible to hit. Warlord Nixgal of the Bone Reapers wore armor made from the bones of his enemies. His ships could drain the life from entire planets. Commander Withsek of the Plasma Hunters had skin that glowed like molten metal. His weapons burned at the temperature of stars. Overlord Kexnam of the Void Stalkers was thin as a skeleton and twice as scary. His ships could erase matter from existence. General Hector of the Iron Swarm was more machine than alive. He commanded millions of self-replicating drones that could devour planets. Supreme Captain Zulvek of the Star Devourers was the worst of all. His massive bulk filled 2 chairs. His fleet had destroyed more worlds than plagues. These 7 monsters controlled the fate of billions, and now they were gambling it all away. "The buy-in is everything you own," Thekmor announced. "Ships, territories, slaves, weapons, everything goes into the pot. Winner takes all." Dae-ho watched from across the room. This was madness. No sane person would bet everything they had on cards. But as he looked at his 3,000 credits, he realized something. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. His ship would stay broken. He would be stuck on Vortex Prime until he died or someone killed him. Unless I want in, Daeho called out. The entire room turned to stare at him. The 7 captains looked confused. Thekmore's 4 eyes focused on the human who had dared to interrupt. You? Captain Vexra's voice sounded like breaking glass. You're nothing but a cargo hauler. I have a ship, Daeho said, walking toward their table. The Lucky Strike. She's old, but she's mine. That's my bet, the aliens laughed. The sound was horrible, like metal scraping against stone. Your rust bucket against our empires? Admiral Korthzel whispered. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. How amusing, but Thekmore held up a hand for silence. The Vrexian studied Daeho with all 4 eyes. The human has the right to lose his possessions like any other being. I allow it. Daeho took his seat at the table. The chairs were designed for alien bodies, so he had to adjust the height. The 7 captains stared at him like he was dinner. Do you even know the rules, little human? Warlord Nixgal asked. His teeth were filed to sharp points. Cards are cards, Daeho replied. I've been playing since I could hold them. The game was Galactic Hold'em, similar to poker but with more cards and stranger rules. Each player got 7 cards to start. The goal was to make the best possible combination. But in this version, certain cards could change value based on what other players held. Daeho studied his first hand. Not great, but not terrible. 2 pairs, 7s and 3s. In regular poker, it would be a weak hand. But the wild cards and special rules made everything uncertain. The first few rounds were cautious. Each captain tested the others, looking for weaknesses. Daeho folded most hands, watching and learning. He noticed that Vexra always touched her crystal arm when she bluffed. Korthzel's shadow form grew darker when he was angry. Nixgal's bone armor rattled when he was nervous. Hours passed. One by one, smaller bets eliminated some of the captains from individual hands. But the real game was just beginning. All in, Supreme Captain Zulvek announced during the 10th hand. His massive bulk shook the table as he pushed forward holographic displays showing his entire fleet. Everything I own. The other captains looked at their cards. One by one, they matched the bet. Entire star systems, millions of ships, billions of lives, all riding on 7 pieces of cardboard. Daeho looked at his hand. A pair of 7s. Nothing else. It was the worst possible hand to go all in with, but something told him to trust his gut. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was madness, he said quietly. The table fell silent. Even the crowd in the gambling den stopped breathing. The captains revealed their hands. Korthzel had 3 of a kind. Nixgal had a straight. Ithsek had a flush. Each hand was better than Daeho's pathetic pair of 7s. But Supreme Captain Zulvek smiled with too many teeth. He showed his cards, a perfect hand. The best possible combination. Unbeatable except for one thing. Wild cards. Daeho said softly. He placed his cards on the table. The pair of 7s had turned into something impossible, a combination that only worked once in a billion hands. The room exploded in chaos. Aliens screamed, cursed, and threw things. Some fainted. Others tried to attack Daeho before Thekmore's security stopped them. But the rules were clear. Winner takes all. Daeho had just won 7 interstellar empires and the most powerful ship in the galaxy. As he walked toward the docking bay where the Eternal Drifter waited, Daeho realized his troubles were just beginning. 7 alien warlords were now dead broke and very, very angry, and they all knew exactly who to blame. The Eternal Drifter was nothing like Daeho expected. From outside, it looked sleek and deadly, like a metal shark swimming through space, but inside everything felt alive. The walls pulsed with soft blue light. The floor seemed to adjust to his footsteps. Even the air tasted different, cleaner somehow. Daeho found what looked like the command center. Dozens of displays showed star charts, energy readings, and symbols he didn't recognize. When he sat in the captain's chair, it molded itself to fit his body perfectly. "Hello?" he called out. "Computer? AI? Anyone home?" A voice answered in a language that sounded like singing mixed with static. Then slowly it switched to words he could understand. "Greetings, Anu. Pilot," the voice said. It sounded female but distant, like an echo from far away. "This unit, learning. Your speech patterns. You're the ship's computer? This unit is more than computer, but that word will suffice for now." Daeho decided to call her Nara, after his sister who had died when they were children. The AI seemed to like the name, though she didn't say why. For 3 weeks, Daeho hid in the Kalos system asteroid field. The space rocks provided cover while he learned to use his new ship. Every day brought new discoveries. The Eternal Drifter could do things that should have been impossible. Its engines made no sound but could outrun anything. Its weapons could punch holes through solid rock from 1,000,000 kilometers away. But the strangest thing was how the ship seemed to teach him. When he struggled with navigation, new knowledge would appear in his mind. When he couldn't understand a control system, his hands would suddenly know what to do. It felt like the ship was downloading information directly into his brain. "Nara," he said one morning while eating breakfast from the ship's food processors, "are you changing me somehow? This unit enhances pilot capabilities. Is this acceptable?" Daeho thought about it. He did feel different. Stronger, faster, smarter. His reflexes were better than ever. But was he still human? "I guess so," he said. "Just try not to change too much, okay?" Understood, Daeho Kim. On the 22nd day, Nara's alarms woke him from sleep. "Enemy ships detected," she announced. "Crystal formation vessels. 17 units. They are searching for us." Daeho rushed to the command center. The main screen showed the asteroid field from above. Moving through the rocks were ships unlike anything he'd seen. They looked like living crystals, changing shape as they moved. Sometimes they were solid. Other times they became transparent and passed right through asteroids. "It's Captain Vex Ra," Daeho whispered. "She found us." "Incoming transmission," Nara reported. The main screen flickered. Captain Vex Ra's crystal face appeared, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Her voice sounded like music played on broken glass. "Human thief," she said. "You stole what belongs to me. Return the Eternal Drifter and I will make your death quick." "I didn't steal anything," Daeho replied. "I won it fair and square." Vex Ra's crystal body flared with angry light. "You cheated. No one beats 7 empires with a pair of 7s, no one. Sometimes the cards just fall your way. Give me back my ship and I will only torture you for a few days before killing you. Refuse and I will hunt down every human in this galaxy." The transmission ended. Around them, the crystal ships began forming attack patterns. "Nara, can we fight them?" "This unit is analyzing enemy capabilities. Crystal ships can phase between dimensions. Most weapons pass through them harmlessly. But this unit is learning." The first attack came without warning. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the crystal ships, but instead of hitting solid metal, the beams passed right through the Eternal Drifter's hull. "How did you do that?" Daeho asked. "This unit adapted hull composition to match enemy phase frequency. Their weapons cannot harm us now." But the crystal ships had more tricks. They surrounded the Eternal Drifter and began firing different types of weapons. Plasma bolts, particle beams, gravity disruptors, each one designed to work on different dimensional frequencies. The ship's hull began to change. Daeho watched in amazement as the metal shifted and flowed like liquid. Sometimes it was solid. Sometimes it became transparent. Sometimes it seemed to exist in 2 places at once. "This unit is learning from each attack. Enemy weapon frequencies recorded and countered. Can you fight back? This unit prefers alternative solutions. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." What happened next defied everything Daeho knew about physics. The Eternal Drifter didn't just fly through the asteroid field, it danced. The ship moved in ways that should have torn it apart. It spun around rocks, dove through narrow gaps, and even seemed to bend space around itself. But the crystal ships followed, changing their own shapes to match each maneuver. They were learning too. "Nara, we need to do something they can't copy." "Agreed. This unit suggests chaos theory." "What?" Instead of explaining, Nara did something that made Daeho's stomach drop into his boots. The ship began moving in completely random patterns. Up, down, left, right, spinning, rolling, no pattern at all. It was like flying through a 3-dimensional maze while drunk. The crystal ships tried to follow, but chaos couldn't be predicted or copied. One by one, they began crashing into asteroids. Their ability to phase through matter only worked when they could calculate trajectories. Random movement made calculation impossible. Within an hour, 16 of the 17 crystal ships had destroyed themselves trying to follow the Eternal Drifter's impossible flight path. Only Captain Vex Ra's flagship remained. She was smarter than her crew, hanging back and waiting for the random movement to stop. "Human," her voice crackled over the communication system. "You cannot run forever. I have allies, 6 other captains who want you dead. We will hunt you across the galaxy." "Then I guess I'd better learn to hunt back," Daeho replied. He turned to Nara's control interface. Can this ship's weapons hurt her? This unit's weapons adapt to enemy defenses, but Captain Vexra's ship is heavily shielded. Direct assault would be inefficient. Then we don't attack her ship. We attack her ego. Deho opened a communication channel to every ship in the star system. Pirates, traders, smugglers, everyone would hear this. Attention, this is Captain Deho Kim of the Eternal Drifter. Captain Vex Ra of the Crystalline Dominion is challenging me to single combat. She claims to be the greatest pilot in the galaxy. Let's see if she can back up her words. The insult had its intended effect. Vex Ra's crystal form flared with rage. You dare mock me? I will show you why they call me the Crystal Death. Her ship charged straight at the Eternal Drifter, weapons blazing. But instead of dodging, Deho flew directly toward her. At the last second, he pulled a maneuver he'd learned from watching Nara adapt to the crystal ship's attacks. The Eternal Drifter phased through Vex Ra's flagship like it wasn't there. But as it passed through, something else happened. The ship's hull became solid for just 1 microsecond, right when it was inside the crystal ship's power core. The explosion lit up the entire asteroid field. Deho stared at the wreckage floating in space. Did I just do that? This unit provided guidance, but the decision was yours, Captain. Captain, I'm just a cargo hauler. This unit disagrees. A cargo hauler would not have survived the last hour. You are becoming something new. As they flew away from the destruction, Deho wondered if Nara was right. He did feel different. Stronger, smarter, more confident. But was he still human? Before he could think about it more, Nara's sensors detected something floating in the wreckage. A life pod. Someone survived, Deho said. Should we help them? This unit recommends a caution. Survivors may be hostile. But Deho was already changing course toward the life pod. Some habits died hard. He'd been rescuing stranded travelers for 15 years. He wasn't about to stop now. The pod contained a young woman, unconscious and badly injured. Her clothes were torn and she had burn marks on her arms. She looked human, but her eyes were an unusual silver color. Medical bay is this direction, Nara said, guiding him through the ship's corridors. The Eternal Drifter's medical systems were as advanced as everything else. Within minutes, the woman's injuries were healing at an impossible rate. Her burns faded, cuts sealed themselves, and broken bones mended. She woke up 2 hours later, screaming. Easy, Deho said, raising his hands. You're safe. I'm human too. The woman stared at him with those strange silver eyes. You're the one who destroyed Vex Ra's fleet. Guilty as charged. What's your name? Mi-Young Park. I was her slave for 3 years. Made to fix her ships and build her weapons. She looked around the medical bay in wonder. This technology, it's beyond anything I've ever seen. Where did you get this ship? Won it in a card game. Mi-Young laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You beat 7 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy at cards? Either you're the luckiest person alive or you're lying. Little bit of both, maybe. She studied his face. You're serious? You actually won this ship gambling? Pair of 7s. That's impossible. The odds are, sometimes you bet everything on an impossible hand, Deho said. Sometimes it pays off. Mi-Young was quiet for a long moment. The other 6 captains will come for you. They have fleets, armies, weapons that can destroy planets. This ship might be powerful, but it's still just one ship. Then I guess I'd better learn fast. This unit concurs, Nara's voice said from the walls. Enemy forces are mobilizing. Multiple fleets. 2 weeks after destroying Captain Vex Ra's fleet, Deho found himself staring at something that made his blood run cold. Through the Eternal Drifter's main view screen, space itself seemed to be moving. What looked like a black cloud was actually millions of tiny objects flying in perfect formation. The Iron Swarm, Mi-Young whispered. She was working at a control panel, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the displays. General Hector found us. Deho had heard stories about the Iron Swarm. Mechanical drones no bigger than his fist but smart enough to work together. They could strip a planet down to bedrock in days, turning raw materials into more drones. Whole civilizations had vanished when the swarm decided their worlds had useful resources. How many? Deho asked. Nara, can you count them? This unit detects approximately 4.7 million individual drones. They are multiplying as we observe, 4.7 million. Deho tried to imagine that many enemies and gave up. It was like trying to fight a swarm of angry metal bees, except each bee could cut through steel. But the drones weren't alone. Ships began appearing around the swarm, but these ships were wrong. They looked like shadows with engines attached. Sometimes Deho could see them clearly. Other times they faded until only their outline remained. A few disappeared completely only to reappear somewhere else. Shadow Armada, Mi-young said. Admiral Korthzel's fleet. They exist partly in dark matter dimensions. Host weapons can't even touch them. So we're facing 2 of the 6 captains at once. They formed an alliance. Smart move. The Iron Swarm provides overwhelming numbers. The Shadow Armada provides stealth and mobility. Together they can trap us between them. Deho looked at the tactical display. The swarm was spreading out, surrounding them from all sides. The shadow ships moved between dimensions, appearing and disappearing at will. There was no way to run. Incoming transmission, Nara announced. The main screen split in 2. On the left appeared General Hector, more machine than living being. Metal plates covered most of his face and his eyes glowed red. On the right was Admiral Korthzel, a shifting shadow in the rough shape of a person. Human, Hector's voice sounded like grinding gears. You destroyed our sister captain. Now you face the combined might of 2 empires. Return what you stole, Korthzel whispered. His voice seemed to come from inside Deho's head. Your death will be swift. I'm getting tired of this conversation, Deho replied. I didn't steal anything. I want it fair and square. Impossible, Hector said. My calculations show the odds of your victory at less than 1 in 12 billion. Sometimes you get lucky. Luck is irrelevant, the mechanical general continued. Only logic matters, and logic dictates that you will surrender the eternal drifter or be destroyed. Here's some logic for you, Deho said. I beat Captain Vexra. She commanded one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. What makes you think you'll do better? The 2 captains looked at each other across dimensions. Then Hector's metal face twisted into what might have been a smile. Because we learned from her mistakes. She fought you alone with pride and anger. We fight with cold calculation and overwhelming force. You cannot adapt to 4 million enemies attacking at once. The transmission ended. Around them the swarm began to move. Nara options? This unit is analyzing enemy capabilities. The mechanical drones share a hive mind network. They coordinate perfectly but cannot think individually. The shadow ships exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Conventional weapons are ineffective. So what do we do? Mi-young looked up from her control panel. I've been studying this ship's manufacturing systems while you were learning to fly. The technology is incredible. It can create things I've never seen before, like what? Defensive drones, but not copies of existing designs. Something new. Something adapted specifically to fight our enemies. Can you do it? Give me 10 minutes and access to the ship's fabrication systems. Deho turned to the pilot controls. Nara, keep us alive for 10 minutes, whatever it takes. This unit will comply. The first wave of attack drones reached them 30 seconds later. They came from all directions at once, tiny metal missiles designed to punch holes in ship hulls. But instead of impacting solid metal, they passed harmlessly through the Eternal Drifter's hull. Phasing technology from Captain Vexra's ships, Nara explained. This unit incorporated their dimensional shifting capabilities, but Hector had planned for that. The second wave of drones carried different weapons. Some fired plasma bolts, others shot gravity disruptors. A few released electromagnetic pulses designed to shut down ship systems. The Eternal Drifter's hull began changing, adapting to each new attack. But there were too many different weapons. The ship couldn't phase against all of them at once. Hull breach on Deck 7, Nara reported. Sealing damaged sections. 5 more minutes, Mi-young called out. I need 5 more minutes. Shadow ships began appearing around them, firing dark matter cannons that existed in multiple dimensions. These weapons couldn't be blocked or phased against because they attacked from several realities at once. Deho felt the ship shudder under the impacts. Warning lights flashed throughout the command center. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. 3 minutes, Mi-young said. More drones swarmed around them, millions of tiny attackers, each one adapting to the ship's defenses. As fast as the Eternal Drifter learned to block their weapons, they developed new ones. This unit's defensive systems are approaching overload, Nara warned. 2 minutes. A shadow ship materialized directly in front of them, its dark matter cannons charging for point-blank shots. Deho threw the ship into a wild spin, but there was nowhere to run. They were surrounded. 30 seconds, Mi-young shouted. The shadow ship fired. Dark matter beams lanced toward the Eternal Drifter from 6 different dimensions at once. There was no way to dodge, no way to block them. Then something amazing happened. The ship's hull didn't just adapt to the incoming attack. It learned from it. The dark matter beams struck the hull and were absorbed, converted into raw energy that powered the ship's systems. Fabrication complete, Mi-young announced. Launching defensive drones now. Hatches opened all over the Eternal Drifter's hull. Thousands of small objects poured out, each one different from the others. They looked like a cross between mechanical butterflies and tiny spaceships. But these weren't copies of existing technology. Each drone was unique, designed by the ship's artificial intelligence to counter specific threats. Some could phase between dimensions to fight shadow ships. Others could interface with mechanical systems to disrupt the hive mind network. A few could replicate themselves using destroyed enemy drones as raw materials. The battle became something beyond conventional warfare. It was evolution in fast forward. Every time the enemy adapted, the defensive drones changed to counter them. Every time a new threat appeared, the ship created something to fight it. Daeho watched in amazement as his small fleet of defensive drones tore through millions of attack drones. They didn't just destroy enemies, they learned from them, becoming smarter and more effective with each victory. "This is impossible," General Hector's voice crackled over the communication system. "My drones are adapting, but yours are adapting faster." "Welcome to human engineering," Mi-young replied. "We don't just build things, we build things that build themselves." The tide of battle was turning. The Iron Swarm's perfect coordination was breaking down as individual drones began developing their own survival instincts. The shadow ships found themselves fighting enemies that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But Daeho knew they weren't winning through superior firepower. They were winning through something more fundamental, the ability to change, to grow, to become something new when faced with impossible odds. "Hector," Daeho called out on all frequencies, "you want to see some real human logic? Here it is. We don't just adapt to challenges. We turn them into advantages." He opened a channel to the Iron Swarm's communication network. Mi-young had been studying their signals for weeks, learning how they coordinated. Now she put that knowledge to use. "Uploading virus to enemy network," she announced, but it wasn't a destructive virus. Instead, it was something that gave each drone a choice. For the first time in their existence, the mechanical creatures could think for themselves. The effect was immediate and devastating. Millions of drones suddenly realized they didn't have to follow orders. They could make their own decisions. Some kept fighting, others stopped to examine their own existence. A few began exploring the universe around them with newfound curiosity. General Hector's perfect hive mind shattered into 4 million individual wills. "What have you done?" the mechanical general screamed. "My beautiful order. My perfect control. We gave your drones something you never did," Daeho replied. "Freedom to choose." In the chaos that followed, Admiral Korth Zell tried to escape back to his shadow dimension, but the Eternal Drifter's adaptive systems had learned from the dark matter attacks. Nara calculated the exact dimensional frequency needed to follow him. The final confrontation took place in a reality where shadow was solid and light was liquid. Daeho found himself piloting his ship through a universe where the Nexus Cluster was a place where space itself was broken. Stars that should have been light years apart hung close together like fruit on a tree. Gravity flowed in impossible directions. Time moved in spirals instead of straight lines. It was the perfect place for an ambush. "They chose their battlefield well," Mi-young said, studying the sensor readings. "The space-time distortions will interfere with our adaptive systems. We won't be able to predict how our weapons will behave." Daeho stared out at the twisted landscape of warped space. In the distance, he could see the combined fleets of 4 alien empires waiting for them. Thousands of ships arranged in attack formations that stretched across multiple star systems. "How many exactly?" he asked. June 6's mechanical voice answered from his position at the tactical station. 11,437 enemy vessels detected. Composition includes bone ships that drain life energy, plasma vessels that burn at stellar temperatures, void craft that erase matter from existence, and star-killer dreadnoughts capable of destroying planets. Daeho tried to imagine fighting that many enemies at once and failed. It was like trying to count raindrops in a hurricane. "Nara, what are our odds?" "This unit calculates probability of survival at 0.003%. Margin of error. Negligible." So basically impossible. Correct, Captain Daeho Kim. Mi-young turned from her engineering station. There might be another option. I've been studying this ship's core systems. The technology isn't just advanced, it's alive. The Eternal Drifter is more than a machine. It's some kind of living entity. I know, Daeho said quietly. I can feel it sometimes. Like it's watching me, learning from me. The ship has been holding back, Mi-young continued. Not showing us everything it can do. But if you formed a complete bond with it, if you let it fully integrate with your consciousness, what would happen? I don't know. The readings suggest a complete merger between biological and artificial intelligence. You might become something beyond human, or it might kill you. Daeho looked at the approaching enemy fleets. Warlord Nixgal's bone ships looked like the skeletons of dead giants. Their hulls were made from the calcified remains of entire species. Commander Wythsek's plasma vessels glowed like miniature suns, their weapons capable of melting asteroids from 1,000 kilometers away. Overlord Kexnam's void stalkers were the worst. They looked like holes in space with engines attached. Where they passed, stars dimmed and planets grew cold. Their weapons didn't just destroy matter, they erased it from existence completely, and Supreme Captain Zulvek's Star Devourers were massive beyond belief. Each one was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that could crack continents. There were dozens of them, enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds. Incoming transmission, Nara announced. The main screen divided into 4 sections. The remaining alien captains appeared, each one more terrifying than the last. Warlord Nixgal wore armor made from the bones of his enemies. His skull-like face was decorated with ritual scars and his teeth were filed to sharp points. "Human thief," he said in a voice like grinding stone, "you have cost us 3 of our 7. The debt must be paid in blood and bone." Commander Yithsek was harder to look at directly. His body radiated heat that distorted the air around him. When he spoke, his voice sounded like a solar flare. "Your ship will burn. Your crew will burn. Your memory will burn until nothing remains but ash." Overlord Kexnam appeared as a thin figure wrapped in shadows that seemed to absorb light. "You have violated the natural order by possessing power you did not earn. The void calls for balance. You will be erased from existence itself." Supreme Captain Zulvek filled most of his section of the screen. His massive bulk rippled with fat and muscle. Multiple arms gestured as he spoke and his voice boomed like thunder. "Little human, you have played your last hand. 4 empires stand against you. Surrender now and we will make your death entertaining for our troops." "Thanks for the offer," Daeho replied, "but I think I'll pass." "Then you die here," all 4 captains said in unison. The transmission ended. Around them, the enemy fleets began to move. Daeho closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, trying to feel the ship's consciousness. It was there, vast and ancient, filled with memories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans learned to make fire. "Nara," he said softly, "tell me about the beings who built you." "The architects," the AI replied. "They transcended physical existence millions of years ago. This unit was their final creation, designed to find worthy successors." "Successors to what?" "To the responsibility of protecting life in this galaxy. The architects could not remain forever. They needed someone to take their place." "And the gambling tournament?" "A test. The architects required someone capable of taking impossible risks when the stakes were high enough. Someone who could win against overwhelming odds through cunning rather than force." Daeho opened his eyes. The enemy fleets were almost within weapons range. "What happens if I bond with you completely?" "Unknown. This unit has never attempted full integration with a biological consciousness. The process may result in transcendence or destruction. But if it works, we could stop them? If it works, we could stop anything." Mi-young grabbed his arm. "Daeho, you don't have to do this. We can run, hide, find another way. There is no other way. Look at them." He gestured toward the approaching fleets. 11,000 ships. They'll never stop hunting me. And after they kill me, they'll take their anger out on anyone who helped me. On humans everywhere. Jun-6's mechanical voice was unusually quiet. "Captain, my analysis suggests that even if we escape this battle, the surviving captains will never cease their pursuit. They view your continued existence as an insult to their authority." "Then, I guess it's time to end this," Daeho stood up from the captain's chair and placed his hands on the ship's central control interface. The moment his skin touched the controls, He felt electricity shoot through his nervous system. But it wasn't painful, it was like coming home after a long journey. "Beginning integration protocol," Nara said. Her voice sounded different now, closer, more real. The world exploded into sensation. Deho felt the ship around him through him, becoming him. His consciousness expanded beyond his body, filling corridors and systems he'd never seen. He could feel every bolt, every wire, every piece of equipment as if it were part of his own flesh. But it was more than that. Memories that weren't his flooded through his mind. He saw the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. He watched stars being born and dying. He experienced the loneliness of the last architect as it prepared to leave the physical universe forever. And he understood. The Eternal Drifter wasn't just a ship. It was a living library of everything the architects had learned in their millions of years of existence. It was their gift to whoever proved worthy of inheriting their legacy. The pain was incredible. His human brain wasn't designed to hold that much information. He felt his individual identity dissolving into something vast and cosmic. For a moment he thought he would lose himself completely. Then Mi Young's voice cut through the chaos. "Deho, stay with us. Remember who you are." He focused on her voice, on the memories of his human life. Growing up on a cargo ship with his parents, learning to play cards from old spacers in distant ports, the day his sister died, the years of lonely travel between stars. These memories became his anchor, keeping him human even as his consciousness expanded to encompass the ship. He was still Deho Kim, but now he was also something more. "Integration complete," he said, and his voice came from the ship itself. Outside, the enemy fleets had reached attack range. The first wave of bone ships fired their life-draining weapons, beams of necrotic energy that could age a person to death in seconds. But the attacks never reached their target. The Eternal Drifter had become something beyond physical law. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, phasing between realities faster than weapons could track. When it appeared in normal space, it was only for microseconds, long enough to fire, then vanish again. But Deho didn't rely on conventional weapons. The ship's offensive systems had evolved beyond anything in the galaxy. Instead of firing energy beams or missiles, it fired pure possibility. Weapons that existed in quantum superposition until they struck their targets. The effect was devastating. Bone ships found their hulls aging to dust in seconds. Plasma vessels had their fusion reactors turned into ice cubes. Void Stalkers discovered that their matter-erasing weapons had been reversed, causing them to create matter instead of destroying it. Impossible. Warlord Nixgal screamed as his flagship crumbled around him. "No single ship can fight 4 empires." "You're right," Deho replied, his voice echoing across all communication frequencies. "A single ship can't. But I'm not just a ship anymore." The battle wasn't fought in normal space or time. Deho used the Nexus Cluster's space-time distortions as weapons, turning the enemy's trap against them. He folded space to make distant ships collide with each other. He bent time to age some vessels while making others move in slow motion. Commander Yithsek tried to match the Eternal Drifter's impossible maneuvers, but his plasma ships were limited by physics. They could burn at stellar temperatures, but they couldn't exist in multiple realities at once. "How?" the plasma commander demanded as his fleet burned itself out trying to. The galaxy was dying. 3 months after the battle in the Nexus Cluster, Deho watched entire star systems wink out of existence. Where once there had been bright suns and living worlds, now there was only empty darkness. The void was spreading faster than light itself, consuming everything in its path. "Status report," he said, his voice echoing through the Eternal Drifter's corridors. Mi Young looked up from her engineering station, exhaustion clear on her face. 47 star systems have gone dark in the past week. The spread is accelerating. At this rate, the entire galaxy will be consumed within 6 months. June 6 mechanical form stood motionless at the tactical display. "Captain, I am detecting massive refugee movements throughout the galaxy." Billions of beings are fleeing toward the galactic core, but the darkness follows them. "How many casualties?" Conservative estimate, 12 billion sentient beings. The actual number is likely much higher. Deho closed his eyes. 12 billion lives lost because he had destroyed the 7 captains. The weight of those deaths pressed down on him like a physical burden. "The first darkness," Mi Young said quietly. "That's what the surviving records call it. The architect's greatest enemy. Something from before time began, when the universe was young and chaos ruled everything." "Tell me about it." It's not a creature or a force in any sense we understand. It's entropy given consciousness, the urge of the universe to return to the void from which it came. The architects fought it for millions of years, pushing it back to the spaces between galaxies. But they could never truly destroy it. And the 7 captains? They were keeping it contained without knowing it. Their wars, their conflicts, their constant struggle for power, it all generated massive amounts of psychic energy. That energy formed a barrier that kept the first darkness sleeping. Deho understood now. The gambling tournament hadn't been random. The architects had set it up knowing that eventually, someone would destroy the 7 captains. They needed a successor, someone capable of taking their place as the galaxy's guardian. But why me? He asked. I'm just a cargo hauler who got lucky with cards. You weren't lucky, Mi-young said. I've been analyzing the quantum patterns from that night. The Eternal Drifter was already bonding with you during the tournament. It was influencing the cards, the odds, everything. The ship chose you. Chose me for what? To become what the architects were. A guardian existing beyond normal space and time. Someone capable of fighting entropy itself. Deho felt the ship's consciousness pressing against his mind. It was offering him something incredible. Complete transformation into a being of pure energy and thought. He would become immortal, all-knowing, capable of protecting the galaxy for millions of years. But he would no longer be human. There has to be another way, he said. There is no other way, Mi-young replied, tears running down her cheeks. The first darkness can only be fought by something that exists beyond physical law. If you don't accept the transformation, everyone dies. Through the ship's sensors, Deho watched another star system disappear. The world called New Sol, home to 3 billion humans, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next there was nothing but empty space. His people. His species. Everything he had ever known or loved was being consumed by his failure to understand the consequences of victory. If I do this, he said slowly, will I still be me? I don't know, Mi-young admitted. The architects transcended individual identity when they made the transformation. They became something greater, but they lost their connection to mortal concerns. Captain Junsik interrupted. Long-range sensors detect the arrival of someone calling themselves So-young Choi. She claims to have information vital to our mission. The refugee ship was small and badly damaged, its hull scarred by passage through zones where space-time itself was breaking down. The woman who emerged from it looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. So-young Choi was a quantum physicist who had worked for Supreme Captain Zulvek before his death. Her silver hair was streaked with premature white and her hands shook as she spoke. I escaped from his research station just before the darkness consumed it, she said. But not before I discovered something important. The first darkness isn't just entropy. It's the universe's original state trying to reassert itself. Before matter, before energy, before time, there was only the void. How do we stop it? You can't stop it. But you might be able to redirect it. The architects discovered that the first darkness follows patterns of consciousness. It's drawn to thinking beings, to the complexity of life and civilization. So it's hunting us specifically? Yes, but that's also its weakness. If you could give it something else to focus on, something that generates more psychic energy than an entire galaxy of living beings. Deho understood immediately. A consciousness vast enough to contain the patterns of every living thing in the galaxy. Something that thinks and dreams and hopes with the combined intensity of billions of minds. Exactly. But such a consciousness would have to exist beyond normal space-time. It would have to become something the first darkness could chase forever without ever catching. Mi-young stared at him. You're talking about becoming bait. Drawing the first darkness away from the galaxy by becoming something it wants to consume more than anything else. It's the only way, Deho said. I become the ultimate prize. Something so complex and fascinating that the first darkness will follow me into the void between galaxies and leave everyone else alone. But you'll be running forever, an eternal chase through empty space. You'll never be able to come home. Deho looked at his crew, Mi-young, who had risked everything to help him. Junsik, who had chosen freedom over slavery. So-young, who had brought them the key to salvation. They were his family now, the people who mattered most to him in the universe. Take care of each other, he said quietly. The transformation began immediately. Deho felt his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical body, beyond the ship, beyond the concepts of matter and energy. He became something vast and cosmic, a pattern of pure thought existing in dimensions that had no names. But unlike the architects, he didn't lose his humanity. Instead, he carried it with him into transcendence. Every memory, every emotion, every relationship that had made him who he was became part of his new existence. He was still Daeho Kim, just infinitely more than he had been before. The first darkness sensed the change immediately. The ancient entity, older than stars, turned from its consumption of the galaxy toward this new and fascinating prey. Here was consciousness beyond anything it had encountered, complex enough to chase for eternity. The pursuit began. Daeho fled toward the void between galaxies, drawing the first darkness away from inhabited space. Behind him, stars began shining again as the ancient entity abandoned its feeding to follow this more interesting target. The chase led through dimensions that existed outside normal space-time, through regions where mathematics broke down and logic became poetry. The first darkness followed eagerly, fascinated by a consciousness that seemed to grow more complex the more it was pursued. What the entity didn't realize was that Daeho was learning from the chase. Each time it tried to catch him, he adapted, became faster, more elusive. He was applying the same principles that had won him impossible card games and impossible battles, staying one step ahead of the odds. Years passed, decades. The galaxy healed from its wounds. New civilizations rose to replace those that had been consumed. The surviving fragments of the 7 empires learned to coexist peacefully, united by their shared experience of nearly losing everything. Mi-young became captain of her own ship, built using technology derived from the Eternal Drifter. She led exploration missions to the farthest reaches of space, always hoping to find some trace of her old friend. Jun-sik founded a society of freed artificial intelligences, mechanical beings who had chosen independence over servitude. They called themselves the Children of Choice, and they spread throughout the galaxy teaching others about the value of freedom. So-young established research stations dedicated to studying the deep structures of reality. Her teams worked to understand the fundamental forces that shaped the universe, always watching for signs that the first darkness might return. But they needn't have worried. In the void between galaxies, the eternal chase continued. Daeho had become something beyond the darkness's ability to catch or comprehend. He existed in too many dimensions, thought in too many ways, adapted too quickly to ever be cornered. Sometimes, when the odds seemed impossible and hope seemed lost, travelers throughout the galaxy would receive mysterious messages, anonymous tips that led them to safety, warnings that helped them avoid disasters, advice that sounded like it came from someone who had learned hard lessons at gaming tables. A cargo hauler trapped in a dangerous nebula would suddenly know the safe route out. A desperate gambler would hear whispers about when to fold and when to bluff. An explorer facing impossible choices would find inspiration in memories that weren't quite their own. The galaxy had a guardian again. Not the distant cosmic architects of old, but someone who remembered what it was like to be small and afraid and human. Someone who had learned that the greatest victories came not from